This program is sponsored in part by the National Catholic Society of Foresters. Hello again and welcome to Looking at Social Justice. I'm Jim Grant and today I have a most interesting guest. Usually we have to prepare a little bit ahead of time, get a little agenda, figure out what we're going to talk about. But we're scrapping all of that today because we have an old friend. I shouldn't say old friend. We have a friend that I've had for a long time. His name is Vincent Lavery. He is no longer living among us here. He's in Ireland. And Peggy and I visited with Vincent last year, and he's here for a very special occasion, visiting his good friends in Fresno. So we're labeling this show Vincent Lavery. He's back. So Vincent, I did a show with you back in 2003. That would be of this millennium, 2003. We did a few shows back when you were in the United States. Tell us, Vincent, as you can, what's the state of social justice in your world, how you see it from Ireland, how you see it as you're back in the United States for this visit. How are we doing? How's social justice going, Vincent?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Jim, for the opportunity to be with you and your viewers and listeners. It's a very deep question. So let me just suggest there are subtle and major differences between the European approach to social justice causes and the United States. I can't speak for Asia or Africa, but I think one of the interesting, I went back 12 years ago, one of the interesting and very disappointing things I was to discover was that grassroots organizing in Ireland, which I think is a microcosm of Europe, is not like it is in the United States. The United States, with all of its problems, I think one of its strengths is that the ordinary individual, if he or she is prepared to put his or her time into it, can organize and can work towards small goals or big goals. But in Ireland, for me, to a totally unacceptable degree, there is and we can't blame the British for it, although maybe they have some responsibility, is the common value held by far too many Irish people, which is, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are that you can rise up out of the mire and make change and organize? In America, let me give you a quick example. I've written 4 books on soccer, and I went into the headquarters of the soccer organization in Ireland, told them I'd Class A referee license, blah, 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 4 books translated into Chinese, and I offered my services free. They never asked me for a phone call or a telephone number. And I think to wind up, in America you can do things, and I hope young people who may be listening to this can truly believe it, because my 50 years in America and my 12 years back in Ireland show me that America, it can be done. Obama said that, but I wrote a letter to him which I never got a response to, and I said, Dear Mr. President, you need to improve that statement. It can be done if you organize and are somewhat prepared to suffer a little pain. There's no good just going on the comfort side of the ego or the comfort side of the conscience. You have to get into the pain side. And many people in the Catholic Church today are deeply on the pain side of life, but out of it, I think they and others will grow stronger. As I think, parenthetically, I think America will grow stronger because of this man in the White House. I'd rather not say his name, if you don't mind.
I don't even know who it is, but let's go on. About your trip here, Vincent, I really think we can connect to what you've said before, to your motive for being here. You're here with your friends who are pulling together a massive event on July 22nd, 2019, to look back, to celebrate great resistance that has gone on in the Valley. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how this organizing that you say is possible has been achieved by people like you, by Peace Fresno, by the Fresno Center for Nonviolence, organizations that are still very active, groups that have not lost a step. While you've been in Ireland doing what you're doing, these groups are still doing what they're doing. Catch us up.
I came to Fresno in 1967 after working for almost 2 years for Senator Robert Kennedy, and I was attending Fresno State, and the movement hit Fresno, not ironically, probably understandably so, 2 or 3 years after it had hit Berkeley, Stanford, and Columbia, and University of North Carolina. And so what's happening tomorrow, Joel Ice, one of the students at that time, got the idea, a tremendous idea, of those who were participants in the anti-war and the civil rights struggle, in the multitude of environmental issues, in the United Farm Workers issue, came up with the idea of as many as could come back to Fresno for tomorrow at the Unitarian Church between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock. And not because I'm a small grain of sand in this gathering, but I truly believe, and I could be totally wrong, I did make a mistake about 39 years ago, which I've forgiven myself for. That was a little humor, Jim, sorry.
Yeah, I was laughing
Okay,
inside.
good. I didn't see the big enough of a smile.
Right here.
But I think it's a microcosm of the nation in the 60s, what's happening tomorrow. So I do hope it's recorded and we learn from it. One of the promises that I was given was if I came back, and incidentally the peace and social justice community in Fresno paid my way back, which I'm eternally grateful for, because I do live on, well, never mind that. I came back on the promise that at the end of this gathering there would be some, be it resolved, that we do something, and I have a proposal of what we need to be it resolved, which maybe if you have time we can get into, but I want something to come out of this meeting, because I love meetings if at the end of them be it resolved that we do something. But I've attended too many in Ireland where at the end of it, be it resolved, let's go to the pub and have a pint of Guinness.
There we are.
And let me close with Ireland. It's a beautiful country and wonderful people, but the syndrome of who do you think you are, that you can rise up from the shackles, from the potato fields and do something, is still, in my judgment, very evident throughout the country.
About this event, we want to remind people that we probably here on Looking at Social Justice will have a chance to interview some of the people who will be having this massive reminder of the energy of the 60s, just what was going on. And that is going to be July 22nd, 2019 is the day in which this event is being celebrated. We will probably have Mike Rhodes and some other people back. We'll probably have some footage. We may see Vincent on some footage that will be used in a future podcast. We'll see. Vincent, what would be another area of your major concerns for the social justice in the world that you might like to share, reminding us that there are things we can do about it? You said here you can do things. Back in Ireland, it's a bigger challenge. What are some things you wish we would keep doing, Vincent?
Well, there's two ways of getting power, the bullet or the ballot. And Ireland for too long has known the bullet. The United States, fortunately, to a significant degree, has stuck to the ballot. But unfortunately, in my judgment, the proponents of a fair and just society have not worked adequately or sufficiently or effectively through the ballot box. After all, if you could get a majority of people on the Ways and Means Committee, you could change the direction of the budget and the direction of this nation, ergo the planet. So my very simple proposal is to run one candidate in each of the 435 congressional districts in the November 2020 election. They can run as Democrats, Republicans, or Independents, or Green, or Libertarians, but they run on the premise that the American military budget has to be lessened, not just that we're anti-military, but money spent in the military does not draw the effectiveness of money spent on welfare. Yes, people who are down on their luck, in education and transportation. So to lower the military budget, and secondly, all 435 would agree to run on an issue of environmental issues. We needn't go into that. This blue, lovely planet is not going to be effective for our great-great-great-grandchildren to live on if we do not make changes. And here we have an individual in the White House who says there's no such thing. So in closing, imagine if out of this project, out of the 435 congressional districts, one candidate in each, or more if necessary, advocated what I've just stated, and let's say they just won 25 seats. 25. That would be 1 out of 20. What a lobby group in Congress and Washington to make change for social justice.
Speaking of the 2020 election, do you have any feeling from, not that you're here because you are across the pond, but what are you seeing in what might be candidates coming forward? Any light do you see, or just heat? What are you seeing in that assemblage of candidates?
Well, I may be living in Dublin, but I have CNN and I have Fox, and I have CBS and ABC, and I have the New York Times and the Washington Post.
So
Unfortunately, I don't have the Fresno Bee, but I'm not removed from America, Jim. Since I've come back, I've discovered in conversations that I'm ahead of some people on some of the American issues and behind on others because of modern technology. But specifically, did I cover?
Whom are you looking at encouraging us, since you're talking about how to maybe do something in Congress? What about something in the White House? Do you see any light in the candidates?
A few weeks before I left in 2006, I had a conversation with 3 or 4 of my fellow Democrats and Republicans, because I had many friends in the Republican Party, and we were sitting around, and I made the statement, I said, I think I've seen it all in American politics. I've seen an assassination, I've seen a resignation, I've seen impeachment proceedings brought forward, I've seen one who could hardly spell potato, at least his partner couldn't spell potato. I've seen it all, I said. I meant it. How wrong I was. I had not seen what was to come. And I know I've always tried to be objective. I made some people in Fresno a little angry with me because I spent a lot of time talking to right-wing conservatives, but there's no good talking to the choir. But I firmly believe this occupant of the White House is not a Republican. We will blame the Republican Party if they do not at some juncture come out and speak out against the atrocities and the fraudulent and the criminality, apparently, of this man. He is not an American in any sense of Jefferson or Madison. He is frightening. He has no direction. He is playing on our fears and our emotions. And what the Democrats have to do, in my opinion, in the 2020 election is, I personally, if I may say so, may I? I personally support Joe Biden, although politically any one of the other 22 are closer to my political spectrum. But the issue in 2020 is not to satisfy Vincent Lavery's ego by voting for the one he likes or associates closest with. The object of people like me is to vote for somebody who can beat this man in the White House. And in my humble opinion, Joseph Biden, he is a good man. He may not be as liberal as some of us want. He is not associated with the word socialism. But by goodness, the word socialism, I know it's anathema to too many Americans. But I'll tell you, in my humble opinion, once again, this country for too long has allowed socialism for the rich. You've heard the cliche before. And it's not a cliche, it's a fact. Socialism for the rich and the poor to struggle and get the breadcrumbs from the table of wealth that this country. So one final idea that I firmly believe, I'm not anti-corporation. I'm pro-corporate structure. But what they have to move towards is dividing the profits of multinational corporations and dividing the profits with the workers. There's nothing wrong with a high-paid, skilled business person getting over $500,000 a year. I understand that sounds horrible as a liberal to say, but we have to reward ingenuity. But what has to come out of corporations is to take part of the 25%, 40% of the profits of the corporate structure and divide it amongst the workers and charitable causes. Then corporations will be carrying out their social and justice responsibilities.
What are you thinking about the 2018 election, the way it went with the influx of a little bit of a different looking Congress? Did that animate you, or are you finding it not adequate?
It was very necessary that it happened because of the power of congressional committees. However, the Democrats had better not devour each other. Because I picture a scenario like the following. It's 4 weeks before the election, and the man in the White House is down in Biloxi, Mississippi, distributing soup to the poor in a soup kitchen. And all of a sudden the media starts saying, oh, this is the softer and kinder and gentler side of this man, Donald Trump. I imagine 2 weeks before he will come out and say, look what I did. I stopped the war in in Afghanistan. And he will come out with 2 or 3 platitudes that are true and he deserves credit for, but he does not deserve credit for the disgrace that he's brought to handicapped people, to victors in the Vietnam War, McCain, to what he's done with women. It is unforgivable, because the man does not, the only thing he understands, in my humble opinion, is you're fired. What a horrible thing to be proud. You can say to a person, I'm sorry, John, I'm sorry, Mary, but you've lost your job because of XYZ. But to get a thrill and some kind of esoteric, sexual, sensual gratification out of saying you're fired says more about the man than I have the ability to describe.
So what I'm really appreciating is that you are determined that the United States needs to come up with a winning candidate. Is there anyone else besides Joe Biden that you see able to perhaps bring the country with him or her? Because you seem to be, whatever it takes, we do need a different administration. Is there anyone else in the mix?
If you look at the blue-collar workers in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, who put this man into the White House, and I'm ashamed to say it, a large majority of them were blue-collar Irish Americans who put him in. They put him in out of fear, just like Brexit in the United Kingdom passed out of fear of immigrants. What we've done, there are similarities, and I'm very careful how I word this. There are similarities between the early 30s in Europe and what's happening in North America today and across Eastern Europe. There are strong similarities, and I don't want to go any further with that, because similarities can be demagogic and intellectually weak. But we've got to be aware of the similarities. When you say that there were good men on both sides, when the Nazis and the Ku Klux Klaners were marching against people for social justice, and you say there was good people on both sides, you're out of tune with reality. Or else you're an ignoramus. But each out of tune with reality or an ignoramus is equally as dangerous when you have access to the button and all the power that goes with the White House.
You said one issue that is also very important, besides diminishing the military budget, is the environment. You said, oh, let's leave that aside. I'm going to bring it up right now. The bishops of California have just written a major text challenging us to make it a priority. Give us some thoughts, Vincent, about the importance of the environment, because when Peggy and I were in Ireland, we noticed how we think there is a totally different mindset in Europe over the need to address the environment.
You're dead right, but unfortunately they're not prepared to do anything about it right now. They won't even support a carbon tax. A lot of talk, but no action, no long-term planning, like my 435 plan is long-term.
Tell us the 435. You said I may drop a 435 on you. Go ahead. What's 435?
Earlier we touched on it, the congressperson in each of the 435
Oh, that's
districts.
it. Okay, that's the 435.
That's long-term planning. But in Europe, with regards to environment, not in my backyard, is rampant. And I ran for Congress here in 1972 against a Republican, Bob Mathias, very conservative, but a man who recently died, who I highly respected as an individual, although I ran against him. Two of my issues were the abolition of diesel and gasoline cars by 2025.
Oh my.
And the abolition of all chemicals by 2050. Thank goodness we've got rid of DDT, but it's absolutely time that we look at a bar of soap and we say, what damage does a bar of soap do going into the water? And plastic, of course, is an absolute given. We've got to, it's not a matter of feel-good left-wing hugging tree politics of people who I get as I'm associated with. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of reality. If we are concerned, if we're not concerned, you know, I don't know how to speak to that person, but I believe in America as in Ireland, there are enough good people who are going to say, I am more concerned about the next generation than I am the next election. And that's what we have to expect from our politicians, the next generation, because it's not esoteric, it's not hyperbole. If we don't look after this environment, fill in the blank. Nothing that you can say is exaggerated. Everything is a possibility. As human beings, orangutans don't do what we're doing. Orangutans have a respect for the leaves on the tree and the bark on the tree and the water that's nearby. They have respect for fellow orangutans. Homo sapien has come out of the cave, and I think we're getting much better. But we need leadership, we need strong leadership, and we need to talk to those who we disagree with. There's no good, as I said earlier, just talking to our own kind. That's feel-good exercise. There's no good emptying out the garage and giving away the goods in it and calling it charity and giving it to St. Vincent de Paul. That's icy charity. There has to be pain. If you can throw $5 in the bin, throw 10. And then you go home and you sleep a little better at night, because it's pain that brings out the strength and the beauty of each of us within our hearts and souls. Without pain, it's a feel-good exercise, in my humble opinion. I've used the word humble a few times because I do get accused of having an enlarged ego. Well, if I have an enlarged ego, I'm living on Social Security, $230 a month, because I couldn't get a job in this town for 20 years. So I paid with my enlarged ego, but to hell with my enlarged ego. Look at your own family, look at your own future, and get involved. Be it moving a grain of sand, but if enough of us move a grain of sand, one day the mountain of hate will collapse.
You did give us a little mention of RFK, But we've got 3 minutes, Vincent. Remind us, as we have celebrated the greatness of certain champions who every year when we remember their anniversaries, usually of their tragic deaths, we somehow become mindful of what a loss. Introduce us a little bit to your friend and the person you championed here in the state, Robert F. Kennedy.
It's the first time I've ever said this in public. It's because of actions I took that he died. I went to Sacramento with a lady friend from Sacramento. Without his permission, we took out his papers with the Secretary of State's office to get his name on the ballot on June the 4th, 1968. Had we not taken out the papers, his name would not have been on the ballot, and Senator Robert Kennedy would have gone on to have won that election. It's not a matter of nostalgia. It's nothing got to do with the fact that he was Irish American. Let's get that up front right away. There was fellas called Joe McCarthy who were Irish American,
Yep.
and I wouldn't cross the street to shake their hand. Well, I would. I'd cross the street to shake
Punch
their
it.
hand if they wanted to have a conversation. But Robert Kennedy, to me, and others at the time, were the last great pride in America without waving flags and without USA, USA. He brought dignity, he brought pride to the common person. And we lost him. But let's move on and find another Robert Kennedy. But more importantly, Jim, let us say that within each of us, there's a Robert Kennedy. And each in our own small way can move that grain of sand. And when you have a billion people moving a billion grains of sand, the mountain will collapse. But if each of us don't think we can move a grain, the bad people can come out on top.
We've got a minute, and I guess I'm going to give you a chance to say something about how your desire might match with someone that you and I hold in great esteem. It's Pope Francis. Would you want to just close by reminding us how a decreased military presence, a cordiality towards people, and a love for the environment would be priorities at this very difficult moment in history? Want to say a word about you and Pope Francis?
I think when I was on your program many years ago, I said the Pope at the time was wonderful, etc. But the Catholic Church has to take a stand on what's known as the just war.
Yep.
And it has to move away from that horrible belief. There's no such thing as a just war. The power of the Pope, as you know, lies in his verbum Dei. The Catholic Church, which I'm a member of, it goes without saying, is going through an extremely difficult time. But out of it, it too will rise with a new ethos and a new addendum for not just the next life, but for this life.
Vincent, I am so glad that in your visit to Fresno, we could fit in a looking at social justice with you. We enjoyed you hosting us in your beloved Ireland and sharing today your love for Fresno. Thank you so much, Vincent.
My pleasure, and thank you very much for the opportunity.